ahead and get us started. I think people will still be chiming in. I think a lot of people have told us they want to watch this because timing is a little wonky for some people, but for others, it's great. So, well, welcome everybody. I'm so thrilled that we have this conversation going, and thanks to Shannon, who really spearheaded getting us all together. I am Gabi Conacher. I am mom to Elliot, who you can see in the upper middle there, who is probably twice the size that he was in that picture. Now he's 12 and he has SCN8A DEE. And for me, I was just really excited to have this topic because I know so many of us feel so incredibly powerless on the journeys for our kids. And there's so many things that we are out of control all the time, and we have to guess what's going to work and push our teams to try things. And it feels like this is a place where we can make a decision to do something and do it and follow through. And with if enough of us keep doing it, there can be real progress and real change that comes from that. And I think we've seen that from all of these moms here, from many of you listening who I recognize names, and I know you are out there doing things and pushing for a better world for our kids. And in honor of Mother's Day, which was just yesterday, we are really, really thrilled to have this conversation and help people think about other ways to engage or just become inspired, hopefully, to either start your own thing or get involved with things that are going on out in the world. So, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Shannon and take us
Yeah.
along.
And just to everyone that's watching, we can't see you or hear you. So do whatever you need to do in the background. The chat, of course, will be open. If you have questions that come up or just to introduce yourself and maybe any advocacy work that you do. But I'm Shannon. I am part of DEEP. I do community outreach, run the social media, help plan webinars. So if you have any ideas, send them my way. Um, and yeah, I'm really big about bringing the community together and helping people find resources. And yeah, just all these moms on here are friends of mine and doing amazing things in the community. To introduce myself, I'll kick it off, I guess. I'm mom to Zoe, who passed away a little over a year ago. She had a rare genetic condition called CRELD1, which is also a DEE. And I love being involved with everything Deep's doing and just being part of the world still. And um, yeah, just hopefully that as we continue to do work in whatever space we're in, that kids like her will have better outcomes and better quality of life moving forward. I'm all about helping every mom that comes after me. And yeah, so that's my little blurb. How about we'll start up at the top in from the picture. Colleen, how about you go? Introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah, okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Colleen Gendrius. Let's see. I am mom to Owen. Owen is going to be 8 years old pretty soon. He has Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. We've been through it all with that little guy and the relentless battle that is severe epilepsy, of course. And let's see. I started a small nonprofit called Electric Love, and we do fun and kind of intense events for people impacted or families impacted by a disability and rare disease. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Um, we'll continue. We'll go over to Anne, who she's actually part of our board of Deep, but we love having her and she's doing amazing things for her daughter Jordan. So, Anne, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. I'm Ann Thompson Heller. I'm from Connecticut. I've got a 4-year-old daughter named Jordan who has an undiagnosed DEE and cortical visual impairment. And so, as Shannon said, I do serve on the board of Decoding Developmental Epilepsies, which is home of Deep Connections. Love this work. I have a relatively long history of advocacy, but ever since Jordan's diagnosis, everything kind of shifted. And the old stopped and then the new kind of started. And so, I'm excited to continue to try to make change, in the world for Jordan and all her friends.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. Okay, how about you, Lindsay?
Hi, I'm Lindsay Goldman. I'm Skylar's mom. He's 8 years old, and we had malpractice at birth. So our advocacy started from day one. He has HIE, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, G-tube, and currently just got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So we have our hands full with our little guy, and my husband and I, have been advocating for our community, and we started fundraising to build an all-inclusive playground, which we just got funded, and playground equipment has been purchased, and we hope to have our new inclusive playground built by the end of the year.
That's super exciting. I'm gonna have to like make a trip to California
Yes,
so we can
you
go
got to
see.
come. Grand opening.
I know. That's awesome. And how about you, Julie?
Hello, I'm Julie Lazara, and in the picture here is my son, Landon. He passed away almost 3 years ago now, which I can't believe. He would have been 5 just on May 9th. Well, he would have been 8. I'm sorry, he would have been 8. He passed away at 5. And he had LGS and intractable epilepsy. He also has a big sister named Callie who has cystic fibrosis. So my advocacy journey really started with her diagnosis being a rare disease. And so at first I was just really partaking in the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation and the Epilepsy Foundation. And then after Landon passed about a year and a half after that, we ended up starting our own nonprofit, Landon's Legacy Foundation, trying to help those in our community with rare disease and disability. And one of the big things we've been doing, giving out some scholarships and grants and things, but we've really been promoting the seizure training from the Epilepsy Foundation and pairing that with CPR training just to have everyone be safer and be ready for a medical emergency.
I love that. It's so important. Um, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so we can see all our faces a little bit bigger. Um, and so we're just gonna kind of go through, and I have a few questions, and if you want to answer, go for it. And sorry, they went somewhere on my phone, so I need to bring them up again. I had them all pulled up and they disappeared. Um, so give me 1 second, guys.
And I think this is really a diverse group today in terms of the kind of advocacy that people have chosen to take on. And so we'd love to hear from you too in the chat if there's things that you're passionate about that you work on, or if you're getting started and where you might want to put your energy. We're happy to help talk about that too, and think about that and help people find their passion here. Um,
Oh, and Gabi, do you want to share a little bit? Gabi she has a lot on her plate, but she's really mo mainly talking today about her work with Epilepsy Action Network. So I don't know if you want to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I can give a quick overview. So about 2.5 years ago, there was a Curing the Epilepsies meeting, which is held by NIH and government and federal agencies to talk about the state of epilepsy, where things are, and how we can improve. And at the end of that, there was a really brilliant conversations that were happening along the way. There was a portal that was opened by NINS, and at the end, there were two commentaries written, one by the professional community and one by the advocacy community. And it was very clear that in particular from the advocate side, that despite the fact that these meetings have been going on for 20 years, we still haven't made incredible, significant strides in terms of curing or improving the lives or reducing mortality in epilepsy. Yes, genetics is incredible, and we're learning so much more about etiology, but we haven't really quite tackled quality of life and tackling seizure improvement along the way. And so a group of advocates kind of got together and said, what can we do? And this was people from Cure Epilepsy, people from Rare Epilepsy Network, Deep Connections, and the Epilepsy Foundation. And we just started meeting weekly talking about what to do. And over the years, we got funding from some incredible epilepsy families and foundations to really spearhead a campaign to really push forward the awareness of epilepsy, especially on Capitol Hill, and really advocate for additional funding and coordinated resources and action around epilepsy, which is where people may have heard about this call for a national plan for epilepsy, which is currently out there. I will share some links in the chat about that and talk a little bit more about it. But it's really saying we've got to do more, we've got to do better. And the only way it's going to happen is if we work together. And so this has been a real broad coalescing of the community come together and say, we really need this action.
That's great. I can't wait to hear more as we probably go through questions, which I have them up now. So, um, I'd love to hear everyone's like definition of advocacy and are there different types or because I think some people think advocacy might be just like lawmaking or something like that, but I'd love to hear your guys' point of view on what you think advocacy is. Don't all go at
I'll
once.
just I'll say something, which is that every single person on this call is an advocate, right? All of you who are listening, you are not, on the screen with us, but you have to fight every single day for your kids, whether it's getting Medicaid or access to the right referrals or the equipment or the feeding, tubes or advocating can mean so many different things. And there's advocating on a personal level, for your family and your kids. And then there's advocating at a community level and a federal level. So it can happen on many, many different levels, but each and every one of us by default has to become an advocate because we know our children's best and have to advocate for what we think they need because most clinicians don't know, most teachers don't know, right? We have to really speak up and push that forward. So, I think we could all probably sprinkle a little about our personal advocacy along the way, because that's also really, really important, not just for your families, but for breaking new ground for the families around us as well. So that's my sense of advocacy. I'd love other people to weigh in as well.
I really like that. I think when you talk about, personal, community, and, political, I also think of, you had started off, Gabi, talking about the diverse, advocacy outlets, even represented here, and I think sometimes it's, in my mind, I would think of advocacy as this really big thing and, I truthfully political and making really big systemic change. And I tend to be a systemic thinker, but it doesn't necessarily mean, going out and lobbying for something. It could mean getting involved with an organization or being of service, figuring out what's already happening, not necessarily feeling the pressure to reinvent the wheel, but to join an initiative that, is close to the heart and that, I'm passionate about. I think sometimes we recognize that there's a need for something and, we want to fill that gap. Sometimes it's a passion. And then sometimes it's just getting involved and being of service, and lending our voice. I think of, even just the advocacy that can come in visibility, being able to share stories, share ideas, share resources. I think of that too.
Yeah, I'll chime in really quick. I think that a lot of people the word advocacy is just like really strong, and I think people tend to align that with like activism, which is definitely like an avenue of advocacy, probably like a more intense version of it, right? But I think being an advocate can be as simple as just supporting a person, like in our lives, it's supporting our own family members, and then or any sort of cause. It's just sort of like doing that in a little bit of a public format, meaning around people, talking about it a little bit and doing some form of support, however that looks like. And then I just want to like downplay the word advocacy a little bit because it can be such a strong and intimidating word, and it doesn't have to be.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think it could be also so simple as fighting insurance, fighting a school and IEP, fighting DME companies. It doesn't have to always be so strong as political. It's your everyday life. You have to advocate for your kids.
Yeah.
A phrase that comes to mind, and I don't know where I got this from, probably like an old youth pastor or something. It's like your pain turns into your passion, which turns into your
Mhm.
purpose. And
Yeah.
I think that's
100%.
like, yeah, it's like something that just pains you, especially like dealing with like everyday stuff with your kids,
Mhm.
can definitely fuel a passion that, later you're like, find your purpose in that. And yeah, I think it starts with small things. I'm sure like with you, Lindsay, you would think an inclusive park, that's like such a big, grand idea, but you probably came from trying to take your kid to the park and him
Mhm.
not being able to experience things like other kids.
100%.
Yeah, and then you see, I know for me, like Zoe starting school, some things just irked me so bad because she was not the only wheelchair kid in her school, and but no one else was speaking up about certain things, and I became like the squeaky wheel at school that made them start changing things. But it's like, and you have to find what fits like your life now. Like sometimes when you're in the thick of diagnosis, you're not it's maybe not your time to do big grand things. Maybe you're just stuck in the calling the insurance and fighting them on things or the DME company or whatever. Or like for me, like, Zoe passing away, it maybe wasn't my time to, do big things right after that because I'm deep in my grief. But, just I think just finding and you don't have to be, but like I said, everyone, like how Gabby was saying, everyone's an advocate on this call and can be small or big. And a lot of times it starts out really, really small, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
We have
think
to be their voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think some of it we do naturally as moms, and I want to say dads do it too, but of course we see a lot of moms. It looks like there's a lot of moms on the call. But just talking to each other, I know when I initially got diagnosis for both of my kids, it was connecting to other people that have been through it. And then so just kind of being there, being a friend, being a coach, being support, and then advocacy comes from there too. I think just talking to people that are like you and you don't feel so alone. And then you realize you have shared interest and shared goals and shared things that you want to fight for.
Yeah. I love all that. Um, see what my next question
And
is.
Shannon, while you're looking there, I just want to acknowledge the chat. Well, first of all, Lindsay Tammy was saying that her daughter has type 1 diabetes and 21 years ago. And so the technology is changing, which is amazing. I think there's hope, right? And I think this gets at again is connecting with your community, right? Learning from those who have been on this journey
Mhm.
before and just finding ways to get us closer to what we need by leaning on those who've already been there and help us on that journey. And then, there was a question in the chat, like, how do you advocate for a small town to give your child the opportunity like other children, like the playground access or equipment and changing tables and bathrooms that are accessible? I mean, I think that's a really basic question. And maybe, Lindsay, you can share how that journey started for you and like, what did you do first and how did you build momentum around that?
I mean, Shannon was right. During COVID, Sky was still in his braces. His balance is still an issue, and we couldn't really access our local playground. There's wood shavings, those are just dirty on itself. They technically are ADA, but I don't agree with that, but technically they are approved through ADA. So we just did a petition through change.org. We got like over 300 signatures, took it to the city, and they were like, it's not on our radar. We'll do that, in a few years. And my husband and I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and attending every city meeting. And I think they just got sick of us eventually and just said, fine, you can fundraise, go for it. And so we connected with our local Rotary Club as our nonprofit. And we approached the city with our partner, and we had some MOU agreement documents drafted. So it's all legal documents that we are fundraising for this playground, and that money cannot just be given to the city, it has to be used for this playground. And then we just went off. Lots of events, lots of fundraising, lots of cold calls, lots of cold emails, and you just have to keep pushing for, your kids and all the other kids, for grandparents, for veterans, for so many people that can benefit from an all-inclusive playground, even just typical kids playing with disabled kids. It's just a all welcoming environment and it's just relentless work. It's just you can't give up, you can't give in, even on the hard days where you're exhausted. you haven't seen any money come in for a while, you're tired of asking people, you're tired of asking your friends to come support your events, but you just got to keep your head up and keep pushing. And in 2.5 years, we fundraised a little under $500,000, and here we are. We're going to have a playground this year. And whether the city wanted it or not, we were not going anywhere. And I think they realized that the Goldmans are here, whether we like it or not, and we're not going to stop. So you just have to keep fighting no matter what part of that roller coaster you're on. You're on the highs of the highs when all the money's coming in and the lows when it's quiet. And you just got to keep pushing. And we did that for Skylar and for all the other kids.
Oh, I
I was
love
going to ask how much it cost for the playground.
Yeah, so our playground footprint is quite small. We couldn't expand on it, so we just are removing the current equipment and keeping the actual play area footprint. But with, deinstallation, installation, all the equipment, it's around $500,000.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's
Yeah,
so
That's so exciting that you
very
guys are
exciting.
there. Yeah. Um, so, well, this kind of goes into my next question. Why did you pick your specific avenue of advocacy? Which Lindsay kind of just told her, their story. But I'd love to hear from everyone else. Kind of why are you where you are?
I think part of it, it just falls into place, like you're just doing what you're doing and you just realize this becomes my mission. And then echoing Lindsay, we really started with our city too. So that would be my suggestion. It's a little less intimidating to start small instead of like the state level or the federal level, but starting with your city, especially if you have a small city, starting to show up to these things because they have these public forums and events and talks, and you realize, oh, I can be a voice. And it's hard because sometimes we don't have the time as busy parents, but a lot of times that's one of the benefits of COVID, that there's usually an online option to some of these meetings so you can attend virtually. And I think just getting a lay of the land of what's in your area is a really good starting point because you want to find the gaps, and that's where we were looking to, like, what I don't want to reinvent what another nonprofit's already doing. I want to do something to help where there's a gap.
Colleen, share your little
yeah.
love.
This is always kind of a funny story to tell because my advocacy, right? I started Electric Love, and we are, we do events for families impacted by disability and rare disease. But what that looks like right now are a couple big, fun, mama girls trips, hiking trips, intensity, outdoor adventure stuff. And I definitely did not see my career moving in this direction. So that was a total surprise. But what happened with me was when Owen was diagnosed and I was really going through everything emotionally and wondering how I was going to be strong enough to raise a kid like this, how I was just going to handle, a really different looking lifestyle. A lot of community members, especially a lot of moms, in epilepsy world, began to support me. And I really needed that. And I think it was so powerful, at least in my personal experience. We have like a in real life brick and mortar epilepsy support group here in Orange County. And I would literally go to these meetings. I'd be just in tears. I could barely get out of bed, but I'd go to these meetings and these moms would just lift me up. Also at the hospital where Owen would be at Chalk, we had volunteers who kind of the epilepsy mom group around here likes to volunteer at the hospital. So I met a lot of moms that way and they'd be sharing their stories. And I tell people all the time that really that sort of community support just really saved my life personally. I was in a really dark and sad place. I didn't think I could get out of bed. I didn't think I could do it. I didn't even want to be like on planet Earth anymore. It was a horrible feeling. And these other moms really lifted me up. And I thought to myself, I want to do the same thing. I want to support this community that saved my life. And how am I going to do it? And it turns out I was making friends and we were joining little Instagram threads. And we kind of discovered a common interest in being outdoors, really finding that to be a healing experience, and really wanting to do something fun together, and kind of like reclaim the joy we had lost in the diagnosis years. And that's how Electric Love was born. It was really just a group of friends that wanted to do something fun together, and be together and support each other in this type of life. And it just grew from there. And it's been so beautiful. And like Shannon was saying, I really turned my pain into passion and purpose. And this is what I do now. And it took a couple of years really to get it off the ground. But here we are. We're doing amazing things. I just feel like we are healing people in our community and making a positive impact. And it just is so deeply meaningful to me.
I think you touched on something so important, Colleen, and I think Julie, you mentioned this as well, which is that it was a journey for me as well. Like I spent the first 2 years crying and being angry and mad and um, just feeling like the rest of the world. I would go out for a walk with my kid, and there's all these kids running around, and like all of these parents have no idea how lucky they are to have it as easy as they do. And so I think, I don't think everyone has to expect that, immediately you become, an advocate who's doing things other than taking care of your kid. That takes time to learn and find that um, within yourself. Some of us, it's very natural to just, fight and fight and fight. And some of us, it's not as easy, right? We don't like pushing, we don't like conflict, we don't like whatever. So I think, you know, give yourself time to find that your personal way to advocate for your kid, and then also to find where your passion is and what gaps there are. I think that's such an important thing too. It's like, is there something going on that you want to join? Do you really love the mission of Electric Love or Landon's Legacy or Deep or, whatever, a local project? And then see if there's people who want to get in on it with you, people who have a like, who would support you, who want to support this idea, and then you'll see what gets traction, right? And some people like Lindsay, like maybe you won't get a lot of the support of people right away that need to be on board, but maybe you get a big team around you who will then fight with you. So, I mean, I honestly was not immediately spurred to action. We started Wishes for Elliot, which was our first foundation that kind of morphed into the SCNA work and the DEE work and all of that. But it was my mom. My mom was just like this force and this, she's the one who said, we got to do something. And I was like, I know, but I don't know if I can do it. And she really helped start
Should have
it.
had
So
Jayetta on the call.
I know Jayetta's here. Shout out to Jayetta, who is a
Oh,
She's a
force,
little, she is
a
very
little
petite
force. Yeah. 4 foot
firecracker.
11 force. Um, but so for me, it took a little while and then it was just all in. And, Annie was asking, how do you do this with all the other stuff that we have to do in our lives, right? It's like first thing in the morning, you get up, there's meds and there's equipment and there's appointments and there's, all the fights you have to fight and all that. Um, I think that hopefully you start to find a rhythm there and you find the things that will aid you in kind of getting done what you need to get done. And then for me, I made time because I had to do something where I felt like I could make a difference. And, no matter what, he had one period of seizure freedom in his life for 3 months and he still wasn't developing or anything. It's like, okay, I fought so hard for seizure freedom and then it still didn't help improve his quality of life in so many other ways. But if I do, if I advocate on the Hill, like maybe we can start to get things moving. Maybe we can start to influence lawmakers. Maybe we can start to get more money um, allocated to, NINDS, which is the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, who does a lot of the funding around epilepsy. And of course, it was the effort of many, many people, right? It was not me alone. It was other parents. It was other mothers and fathers and children of people living with epilepsy and doctors and clinicians. And, when those voices all come together, it can be so much more powerful if we have a group around us that is fighting with a shared mission. So, yeah, it's hard, Annie, to carve out the time, but I think a lot of us probably do things when our kids finally go to. If they go to sleep. Don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know if Colleen, you want to weigh in on that? I saw you nodding. I didn't know if you
Well,
resonates.
and Annie was saying, how do you become a full-time? And many of us on this call are not full-time in this work. I know everyone, like Anne is sitting in her office right now at her real job, probably on her lunch break or something like that. So, but yeah, I think, I mean, some of these questions I have still we're already covering, but another thing, another question is like, what do you actually have to do? I know Lindsay talked a little bit about like getting the petition and going to the city, but like, I know Colleen, she just started the turning Electric Love into an actual nonprofit. So there's like actual rules and stuff you have
Yeah,
to follow to do that. So it's like, and
really.
obviously a pro, she's got like three or four under her belt or something. So
Yeah.
um, and yeah, so what do you, or there's actual like steps you have to take or getting board members or whatever that is. I'd love to hear because I have no idea how to do any of that. So I'll let the experts take control now.
I mean, the thing is, it varies state by state, right? But the basic process is you go to your county, your city, your county, whatever. You get your business license. You get that all formulated. You get whatever certifications you need to do that, and then you go to the IRS and you fill out a pretty simple application. Actually, that part surprised me, and it's got a pretty big fee, though. Of course, because you're not going to pay taxes, so you have to pay a big fee to start. So you do your application, you get the approval from that point. There was like a special bank account that I had to set up, and I had to choose a couple of board members. One of them is here today in the webinar, and then um, you just kind of go from there. But I did have to hire an accountant, and I did have to pay a lawyer as well. So I had to do that. It was a little bit of an upfront investment, but I felt really ready to do it, and it's so meaningful to me. Like I said before, I was absolutely all in, and I went for it.
And that for you, that was you were already a couple years into this is you just became a nonprofit like last summer or something like that. I
Yeah,
can't remember.
we did retreats a couple of times before I thought, okay, I need to actually like make this legit.
Maybe, you don't necessarily have to like do like I don't know, get everything on paper or whatever before you start doing something. So,
No,
um, yeah,
not at all. And you can start, that you don't have to be a nonprofit either. You can be a regular business, and that process is a lot easier. So, or you can just be yourself out there, making noise and getting attention and raising awareness. It's so simple. And sometimes we talk about how like becoming a caregiver or becoming, getting into this lifestyle when you really start to flip that switch and become an advocate. I think when you're getting to a point of stability and a point of acceptance and you want to start giving back to the community a little bit and however that, looks for your personal purposes.
yeah, for sure.
I think so similar echoing what Colleen said. Yeah, hiring a lawyer and an accountant, I think, or clutch really needed to do that, especially if you have another job that you're working, you just don't have the time to do all of it. But I think thinking about what you want to give back and what resources you have. Do you have the money? Do you have the time? Do you have something else that you want to give? Because then that'll kind of narrow down which direction I think you want to go in. So even when we were looking, I was doing research on what's a private foundation versus a public charity and a donor advised fund. Like I didn't know any of these things. And if you don't know, you can Google it and start to learn too. If you want to give money, there's different ways of doing that. You can always do it as an individual. But for some people, you have the gift of time and you can give that. If you're really busy with your kids, you may not be able to do that. And I think it shifts, like we were saying, you have different stages of life that you're able to do different things. So we got to the place of, we want to donate money and raise money. And that's where we came to the place of forming a nonprofit. But I think that if you want to help with your local laws and things like that in your state, that was a whole nother process that I started learning about of how to have your voice be heard, how to register. And I'm assuming every state has something like a request to speak sort of program where you can start looking at the bills, see what's related to the causes that you're interested in, meeting your representatives, things like that, where you can start to make a difference in that way. So I think just choosing which direction you want to go and then being willing and able to pivot as your life shifts too.
Yeah. And, I want to just add too, I see a comment, in the comment box that says, talking about reaching out to your patient advocacy group leaders, patient advocacy organizations. And I think, for me, I actually did start a 501c3 for Jordan called Jordan's Village, but it's in like the very basic stages, and it's probably part of a 20-year plan because realistically, I don't have the time. I can't leave my job. So it's a wish list, and it's something that I'll build into over time. But in the early days, I was desperate and scrambling, as has been talked about, and I reached out to Deep Connections. Jordan is undiagnosed, so we don't have a patient advocacy organization or a family advocacy organization, with her diagnosis. And I feel Deep Connections is that for us. And so that's how I got involved. And I started reaching out more, and I started talking and engaging in conversation and brainstorming ideas and figuring out how I could be of service. And I think it's in those relationships and in community, things have sort of continued to open up and expand. And I continue to have a running list of things that I want to learn more about and get more involved in and be part of. I think, even in talking with other moms and parents all across the country, I'm learning about how different our resources are, the inequities, the disparities, and I live in a pretty blue state, pretty, progressive as far as, resources go, and our disability services are lacking. Maybe that's part of a 5 or 10-year plan. I think part of the advocacy for me is also realizing that I only have so much time and space. And I'm doing this, to make a better world for Jordan and for so many of our kids. So I want to make sure I have the quality time I can spend with her too, and not take away from that. I think it's finding a balance. So I just wanted to throw that out there too.
I think that's important. Yeah. And I'll be honest that, at the top, talked about all the things I do. I have a lot of guilt about, you know, spending a lot of time on advocacy and less time with kids. Elliot also has a sister. So I don't regret it, but I just think there's always this pull. And I think, Anne, you're much better at balance than I am. But I think that's really, really important to like think about it and kind of what I think what Anna Rita was saying in the chat too about, you don't have to start your own nonprofit all the time, right? Reach out to a patient advocacy organization, like if you have a diagnosis to that group or to DEEP. We always welcome volunteers who have passion and like to help us, update pages on our website, or if they have a specialty something they really want to work on. You can find a nonprofit that exists to work through potentially and say, hey, I have these skills I would love to offer to play a role in what you're doing. And oftentimes that means that you can say in the beginning, I really feel like I can do like 2 hours a week. And then maybe you grow into 5 hours a week and 10 hours a week. And then maybe you decide you want to start your own foundation if you feel like you need a home to do what you want to do. So I think there's different ways of doing it and softer ways to jump in than starting your own nonprofit, which, requires, reporting and management and boards and all of this stuff. And it's great, but I think, realizing that you don't have to start it on your own, but you can go to other groups that exist to start playing that role. And I think that what's also important is that I'm going to put in the chat, this is something that can take 2 minutes, right? So there are also levels of advocacy that are just lending your voice. You are of a very important role as a constituent, right? Somebody who lives in the district of a legislator. You can reach out and say, hey, this is my journey on with epilepsy and my child, and really share, give a little insight into your story and say, please join the Epilepsy Caucus because we need more legislators fighting for our kids And they are very responsive. They love hearing from people who live in their district. That is their job. That is what they are getting paid to do, is to represent those who live in their district. So, there can be these little things that you do, and that take just a few minutes, but can be very impactful. And maybe that's the beginning of a relationship with your legislator's office, right? You can reach out again and say, here's something else that I'm concerned about. Or I'd love to set up a meeting with this member when they're back in town, or a Zoom meeting. And you maybe get 15 minutes to tell them a little bit more about your life. And for example, this National Plan for Epilepsy, what that really is just that it's a plan passed by Congress, where you start everybody working together on how we really tackle and make progress into, better treatments and care for those with epilepsy. And this is something that, like, not that Parkinson's has, and ALS, they have these groups that work together in that space. And if you want to be a part of something, you can do it in 2 minutes. It doesn't always have to be that you're taking on a whole life's project. Um, Pause there.
Yeah. Well, I'll add to that. Um, I actually was able to like get on one of these calls with a legislator, and I just got to tell Zoe's story, and we all love talking about our kids. It was so easy, super simple. Timing was kind of bad because literally, sorry, I'm laughing, but it was literally the day after she passed away, and Gabby's like, Shannon, you don't have to do it. I said, no, like this is so important to do even now because it's like we want better outcomes for all the kids after ours. And um, it was just so good just to literally just get on the call and talk about her life, our diagnosis journey, everything. And I mean, the call was like maybe 20 minutes or something like that. And it was so easy. Also, clicking this link that Gabi shared, you'll get emails sometimes, and they literally have it all kind of written out that you just press send to send off. So it's like super, super easy. You don't have to, and there's always ChatGPT too, that will help you write things, but super, super easy. We're kind of covering all these questions. The next couple are kind of just what are some of the small things before the big things, which I think a lot of us have touched on. And then also maybe what are some ways that you like maybe other moms that you guys are seeing do small things, or I'd love to hear about other organizations you guys are hearing about or seeing around in the community. I'll share one. I know, your local children's hospital where most of us spend a lot of our time. Um, they're a great place. I know like I'm on the parent advisory board at Cook Children's for neurology. And it's super easy. I mean, it's kind of an extensive process to get on as a volunteer, but um, like next week I'm joining their 2 staff meetings with the EMU nurses and staff, and you just get to tell you like the parent perspective, like this is what could be done differently or be more inviting this way or whatever. And it's just small things like that that you're just literally sharing your own personal experience. But it can make a big impact on, people that serve our community every day in the hospital. So that's a smaller thing. But I'd love to hear anyone else. I think it'd be great to share a lot of smaller things because I think that's might be where a lot of people are that are listening. I mean, maybe not, but
Yeah, and people can throw questions or stuff in the Q&A
yeah.
chat too if they have
Yeah, that's
thoughts.
where we're headed next. If you have any questions, please throw them in the Q&A or the chat.
I mentioned earlier that we have an Orange County, California epilepsy support network here that is doing some really great work. I love what they do. They're hyper local, so I think that works in their favor, right? Because they've just impacted Orange County really, really well. They have a big walk that they put on. They've got all their, branding and merchandise and stuff at the EMU. And then they actually have the parent support meetings happening at the hospital as well. So it's all kind of tied in together around here. And I wish that every city in America had a network like that. And so I just want to encourage people to look around for them. That's a great place to start. Those are like the first advocates that I met, right? And I understand that it takes some initiative and some motivation to get involved. And believe me, I was feeling like it was super awkward as well when I was first diagnosed. And I'm jumping in, I'm like showing up with a baby, and some of these parents are showing up with adult children and stuff. But it was a really great way to get started. And so even if you're making an impact hyper locally, it's still so significant to do that, right? It's so hard to get onto this national level. So if you're just talking to the people on your block, in your city, at your school, like, kudos to that. It is making a difference for sure.
Yeah. And it benefits you personally because you're meeting friends in real life, people that get what you're going through or can empathize for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add to that? But I can also,
We have a comment here, a question.
yes,
How do they start the hyperlocal group for epilepsy support? I love that. That's a great way to start. I mean,
I
Colleen,
can,
you found something that existed,
yeah,
right? So it was,
And they'd been around a while then, so they'd really gotten they put their roots down and they were really well established. But uh, the Epilepsy Network here got started by partnering with the neurology department at the Children's Hospital. And that really opened up a lot of, space for them and opened up communication for them, and really helped tie those two things in. So I think that's a good place to get started. If you want to start a support group, just see what the hospital can do for you.
mhm.
yeah, I would say ours, Cook Children's has like an epilepsy support group that meets monthly or some like maybe quarterly even. I will share also, I haven't done it in a while, but when Zoe was littler, I did like an inclusive story time. And I just saw a need for, I know, remember
Yes,
that? That was
it
years ago.
was.
But it was really cool because we have really great friends whose kids were growing up with Zoe and they just were like, cool, a
Mhm.
kid in a wheelchair. They just accepted her. But I noticed like there's so much room to like share with the community about, and I wanted to create a space where kids that were disabled could come and typical kids could come and they just could have like an intentional time to be around each other. And then normally we would read a book about disability or, differences or whatever. And we did a few meetups and it was so beautiful and it was really great. And honestly, the way I just shared on Instagram and people that were local, there was a few moms that showed up that were still friends to this day with their disabled kids, and I was like, oh, yeah, they just found me online. I just would post in like the mom groups on in my area, and yeah, we just kind of started a little group that way. And like I said, I haven't done it in a little while, but that's definitely a way you could go about it too, is there's Facebook has all the groups, and it's like they have the local disability mom groups. I know Fort Worth area here in Texas, we have them. So that's somewhere you could start. But I definitely would maybe see what is out there too. Like do some research and see maybe if you can just join something that's already going and maybe help them grow. Yeah.
And it might take a little time too. I've tried to do that to build the local community or be part of more of the local community that's been built. And I went to one and it didn't feel like the right fit, but there are other, groups as well, like the Rare Action Network or the ARC. And then in meeting people, honestly, at, my daughter's PT, I've met other parents, and then talking to them and networking, learning about one of them that started this pediatric palliative care group, where they're looking to kind of explore and ways to strengthen out palliative care services, for our kids at Connecticut Children's. I'd love to be part of that. And so I think it's part of it is just continuing to have the conversations and looking for the opportunities. um, One of the last things I'll say is that it's kind of a cheesy phrase, but I really like the idea of things being intentionally organic. And so I might have this idea that I want to do X, Y, or Z. And so that's, where I want to go, the direction I want to go, but then just building on what's already happening, figuring out where I can get involved and seeing what grows from there. Like I said, I started Jordan's Village. That's a 20-year plan. Maybe it turns into something, maybe it doesn't, but I think, kind of moving in that direction and seeing what happens is sort of, the way things will unfold.
Sometimes you have to put yourself out there too. I am definitely the person, if I see a kid in a wheelchair, there's a mom I met at the pumpkin patch when I had Zoe in her Keen stroller wagon and her tomato chair. And I went right up to this mom and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love his adaptive stroller." And we talked for an hour. And it was just, and now we're friends on Instagram. So it's like, don't be afraid to make friends. And sometimes it might not go well. Sometimes it might be like, oh, weird. But I think if you see a kid in a wheelchair, that mom wants to be your friend just as much as you want to be their friend. So it does take some putting yourself out there for sure, which, some of us are better at that than others. But yeah.
I'll just also add because I mean, early on for us, and this was 12 years ago, so things have changed a lot since then. But we talked to our hospital, and we're like, oh, we want to find a group, and they're like, oh, there's this epilepsy local group that meets, and we got there, and I was there with this really, really severely impacted kid. And then there were parents talking about, oh, I'm scared about my kid going to college or driver's license. And I was like, this is not the place for me, right? It's like I can't handle people who are trying to manage those things, which are no doubt are challenging for them and are scary for them. But I need people who are experiencing the level of trauma and challenges that I am. And so, we just had to kind of, I mean, it's part of why we built Deep because like I also went to our local hospital and they were like, "Oh, we could help you start something, but there's liability and we can't do it here at the hospital because if somebody comes on and we can't have childcare." And I was like, okay, well, that's not going to happen. But um, so I think it's just feeling it out and figuring out where the right space is. And I think Instagram has become such an incredible way for people to connect and putting yourself out there in Facebook groups. It's like, and then asking clinicians and therapists and, even hanging up like a sign at the grocery store. I mean, it could be that hyper local, right? It's like, I know these families are out there, but where are they? Like, is there a bulletin board where I can put stuff up or a local newspaper where you can just put out like an ad that says, are you a, mom to a child who's living with, epilepsy or developmental disability, whatever you want that group to be, and then start building that. And it might take a while, but word of mouth ends up then really being a powerful thing too.
I agree with that and with what Shannon said. I've joined so many Facebook groups. I've gotten kicked out of too many. A lot of them weren't for me. People are very judgmental, even in our disabled world where we should all be supportive.
Mhm.
And I just learned those aren't for me. But in our therapy center, I've met so many people. I've met so many great moms, so many great kids, and then it kind of branches out from there.
Mhm.
And so I might not be the one that can deal with going to groups, but I still feel like I have support from families I've met over all the years of
Mhm.
just meeting people in person.
Yeah.
I agree with that too, and echo the social media that there's some people on this call too that started out as social media friends and they became in real life friends. And like Shannon said, you have to put yourself out there. You might be rejected, but you might just not click with everyone. And then some people you might click more with. But I think for all the bad kind of reputation that social media has, you can choose what your feed is and what you want to see and who you want to follow. And I think you can get a lot of really good ideas from there. And you might just click with someone. And a couple of times too, I was messaging somebody that went to the same hospital and then realized they lived down the street. So you never know unless you put yourself out there.
Yeah, for sure. Um, well, if we have no more questions, I can go ahead and kind of wrap us up. Does anyone have anything else to say or any other questions? And I'll just share my screen and hopefully it goes well sharing my screen.
No, but thanks for having me. I love the work that you guys are doing at Deep. I think it's so important, especially serving that niche population of us outliers here with the absolute, the severe versions of epilepsy. I think it's so important to have an organization that's looking out for us.
Mhm. And I put in the chat that you can reach out to us. But if anything that any of us have talked about resonates with you, we can get you in touch with Colleen if you want to do work. I think all of us are happy to take more volunteers. I'm sure, Lindsay and Colleen and Julie and us at Deep and Ann and Shannon, if you want to lend your efforts or voice there, or, that's another way to be involved. So feel free to reach out to us and we'll get you in touch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you want to climb a mountain, just shoot me a text.
Just
I
not
love
this year. The group is full.
Oh my God, so full.
it.
Okay, let me share my screen actually, not
Well, I
this
think
way.
something as that's coming up, like Colleen and Shannon and Ann and I have been talking too, that like we're all really interested in trying to do some more local stuff, right? So like if there's a group, like if you have a small group that wants to get together locally, Electric Love might want to help you get something set up and supported, or Deep could help you. So I think, reach out to us if you have some ideas, because maybe it could be, you could be supported by the work that we do, and we would love to see more of these local meetups because not everybody can travel, across the country. We all recognize that. So yeah, just be in touch.
Yeah, reach out. Like I feel like everyone on this call, we're all I want to say use the phrase girls, girls, but like we'll not leave your message unanswered in our inbox. I think all of us are a really supportive group and collaborative and everything. So yeah, reach out. Even if you're like, I have an idea, but I need to talk it through with someone, like reach out to any of us. I would love to hear your idea. Um, but shameless plug for other upcoming deep webinars. We have a follow-up to our relationship webinar that we just did a few weeks ago. And her real job is a therapist, a family and marriage therapist. So her and Amanda Griffith Atkins did an amazing job. It's on YouTube, the recording, but we're doing like a deep chat support group follow up. Bring your partner. We'd love to have you guys. I can't see it because everyone's face is on top, but there is a QR code. Here you go. Adapting dads. We're having some dads on a call to talk about all the things they do to adapt their homes, their kids' toys, all sorts of things. We're working on a date still, so be on the lookout for that. And then we're doing a awesome partnership with Courageous Parents Network on medical decision making. We have some moms who, their kids have trachs and other like medical, GJ tube, TPN. So we're just doing a webinar with Courageous Parent Network talking about, all that goes into making those big life-altering decisions with our kids. And then we also would love to know how we did today. If anybody would like to take the survey, and then please, I think at the end of the survey, Gabby, you can chime in. There's a spot to like let us know if you have any ideas to add. And I will say this was Anne's idea. She's the one who was like, we should do a webinar about advocacy. And we were all like, yeah, that sounds awesome. So it all starts with an idea, and we love to hear from the community about what are some pain points and what do we like to do webinars where we bring even clinicians on that can talk to us like talk to parents, from a medical standpoint as well. So but yeah, I think that's it. Anybody, Gabby, anything else to add?
Oh, I just dropped a bunch of links in the chat. Also, there are QR codes, but if you're on your phone and you need to clink out. So first is all of the events that are upcoming are on our website here at the events tab. Then I forgot to mention this, which I can't believe, but another quick way you can get involved in advocacy is doing research. I mean, that is an amazingly powerful way. Your child's experiences, your family's experiences are really, really valuable to help shape the future of how we treat and care for our kids. So Deep has a survey out that should take probably 5 minutes, which is just asking about your medication formulation, what works for you, and we use this to advocate broadly for drug development around the kinds of medication that works best for our families. So that's a quick way to advocate is doing some research with us or any other groups that are out there that you affiliate with, and then the link to let us know how we did today. So if you need to click out instead of QR out, but
Mhm.
and we're right on time. This is so
Yeah,
unusual.
no,
How
it's
about that?
great. And I'll send a follow-up email too with everyone's links to their organizations and foundations and all of that, and then these ones too. So be on the lookout for that. But thanks everyone for
Yeah.
joining today.
Thank you so
I
much to our participants for sharing their journeys and for all of you listening in. And like Shannon said, if you have an idea, reach out to any of us. I think we'd all be happy to hear what you're up to and how maybe we can support you on that journey. So
about that. Awesome. Bye guys. Have a good day.
thanks, everyone.
Bye, thank you.